both of you, each of you has just identified yourselves as one who did the supposedly dangerous thing of singing heavy roles early on, and yet you survived. Let me be a bit of a devil's advocate and point out that, for instance, Caruso and Björling and Domingo all sang Pagliacci as very young men, and they also survived. And Friedrich Schor made his debut as Wotan, and Rosa Pansel sang Forza del Destino at the Met at the age of 20 or short, a little bit after 20. Shouldn't we maybe ask a question? Is it so wrong? Mightn't it be the case that if a singer is right for heavy roles, they're going to be so from the beginning, and if they're not right for them, then waiting won't help?
Well, while they're waiting, they should, as Jackie said, be working on their technique, because I think today far too many young singers are out there in front of audiences doing it before they're actually in control of a basic technique. They don't. I've done a lot of competitions since I retired. I've done a lot of adjudicating, and one of my big beefs is that they don't basically know how to breathe and support the breath and project the sound. It's a very basic thing. That is singing. Breathe, support, project. Breathe, support, project. And this has to be in one motion and tied in to a wonderful legato line from the bottom to the top of the voice and back again. And they should work. Students must work on these things and sing vocalies. So if they're doing arias, use their arias as vocalies. But one hears such straggly singing, such unfocused singing, such wild singing. They're not in control of what they're doing. They don't prepare the sound before they emit it. There's this awful thing of taking a breath and going, bah! And they haven't really thought. That is a phrase that goes from here to here and back to here and down to here and back again to where I started, maybe.
Okay, well, let's pursue that for a second. No, sorry, I want to. You said so many things in there that I would love to get put on the table in a specific way. The idea of breathe, sing, project, breathe, sing, project.
Breathe, support.
Support. How specific can you be about meaning that it's one continuous motion? The intake of the breath and the initiation and supporting of the tone?
Well, there's a funny old thing that I always go back to, which is the happy surprise. And if you go, then your breath is supported, your throat is open, and you can project the sound to the front of the hard palate. It's easy. Absolutely easy. It's one motion.
I've always said this too, that breathing gets too much of a magical kind of connotation. Breathing is easy if you do it right. Breath support is easy if you do it right. And it's a very simple step. There are like two, breathe, support, sing, And I think that I've often said I can teach somebody to properly support the voice in 5 minutes.
But do they remember to do it?
That's the biggie. That's the biggie.
Is that simply the discipline of practice and repetition?
Sure. And you have to have it so much as part of your body that you're not thinking about that when you're out there singing all these big roles. You don't have to think about that. That's probably the reason so many people get so nervous about performances.
And occasionally, you just have to will yourself to do it. It may not be a day that you're feeling so great, and you just say,
feel flabby.
And you just have to really, just use all of the bodily strength that you have, to just keep this whole anchor really supporting all of this so that it's free. I think of this also as like a wheel. That in goes the air, out comes the sound.
Similar to what Joan just said about a continuous gesture.
In goes the And not too much air, because then you can't control it. You have to know how much breath to take.
And the other thing is that you have to, once you have made this motion, is you must start the air flowing, because oftentimes singers will take the breath and then trap the air. and think that they are supporting. Instead, what they're doing is trapping the air. So it's, again, it's that constant motion of this wheel.
But they don't want to let the air go out with the sound. They have to control the breath and not allow all the breath to escape with the sound. They have to have that feeling of, and the support coming from down there and the voice sitting on the breath like a ping pong ball. Really. And then they can speak, sing, do what they please, and slowly this compressed air that they've created by that breath and support will slowly go down, and then they must breathe again. But it's always a matter really of topping up for the most part.
And you know, all those pictures that we've seen of the singers of old who have stood at the lesson with a candle in front of them, they're not there for nothing. These people knew about singing, and that really is still a very good method.
Or a mirror,
Right.
so that it doesn't...
The business of the candle is to sing without blowing out the candle, which would indicate an uncontrolled puff of breath.
Right, and actually not getting that flame to flicker too much.
What is an open throat, and what role does that play? Who wants to start?
Well, I think that the open throat is, again, a very tricky term, because we don't want singers to sing, as we say, in the throat. We don't want them to sing with the throaty sound,
That's
because
singing back in the throat.
oftentimes, well, most of the time, it sounds so much better to the singer himself or herself when they're singing throatily. They just feel the sound much, much better themselves. But unfortunately, the audience doesn't feel the sound. That's the biggie. And of course, the other thing is when you're singing your throat, you have this wonderful control. You just feel like, oh, I've got my hands on it. Nobody's ever going to let it be released. So I can control everything. Unfortunately, you really have to feel the sound going, and you can't hear it that well yourself.
So what in the affirmative sense is an open throat? What is
I think
properly open
Freedom.
throat?
Yeah.
Freedom. Absolute relaxation. Don't
And
feel
also-
anything.
Also,
Nothing.
the back of the mouth, back by the palate, that's where you have to sometimes start lifting and opening up there to allow for space, especially as you crescendo things. And
Consciously raising the soft palate.
right,
Yes.
right.
Breathe, think of the happy surprise, and it happens.
Good. It's exactly the same thing.
And there it is. And that's it. You just sing on that, and you project everything through here. And you don't hang on with your throat, and you don't breathe from here. You really breathe from, well, I always say from the pelvis practically, because if the diaphragm is acting properly, then it is really held in place by muscles which go down into the pelvis, and you have that feeling of a solid base from the tops of your legs to here. In fact, I say to the eyes, because they're very important too. You breathe, you have that deep breath from the bottom of the lungs, slowly feeling the air becomes sort of compressed, and you let that compressed air go out very slowly. But you have the feeling of the air going really right up into the head. It's nonsense in a way, but in another way, you need that. You need the resonance here. You need to use these resonances to project the sound. And some people, I don't know, they sort of stand with their shoulders up and their chins down, and they're cutting off that flow of air and that flow really of sound.
I think what we can say is that Joan and I are agreed that breath support is the basis of all singing. Make no mistake about it. If somebody says to you, you don't need to worry about your breath support, exit immediately.
I've heard a person, a contestant in a competition say, my teacher says the breathing will take care of itself. I said, what?
I asked Carlo Bergonzi not too long ago, he is in his 70s and he's still singing, and I said to him, more than the fact that he's still singing, because anybody who sings that well can still sing, in the 70s for sure, but obviously the question I asked him was, how do you manage to still sing so well and not sing so often? Because a singer, you know, keeps all these muscles toned up and all the body muscles toned up. And I said, how do you manage to keep your voice in shape? And he said, I do breathing exercises every morning. So there you are.
Does